Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Sophia, your host. Time magazine has reported that some 12,000 foreign fighters from 81 nations have entered Syria over the past 3 years with the intention of fighting jihad. These individuals are motivated by a desire to help the Syrian people and fight injustices experienced by Muslims. Is there a better alternative available to them? What is the best way for Muslims to support those who are being oppressed or harmed in other parts of the world? How can Muslims work to establish justice in their home countries and worldwide? Dr. Shabir Ally will help us answer those questions. Dr. Shabir Ally, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
I'm excited about the show.
Now, what are your thoughts on people going to Syria or possibly other countries to fight jihad?
Over time, many young men have asked me if this is a religious obligation. Is this what they need to do? And I tell them no. Why? Well, the question arises in the first place because many young Muslims are looking at the situation in the world. They see that Muslims are dying in large numbers. Nowadays, people have been very concerned about the situation in Gaza with the massive loss of life in Gaza. And it would seem to many young Muslims that the world powers do not care about the loss of Muslim life. And they well imagine that if the situation was reversed and people were dying in some other part of the world, and suddenly there will be massive interventions to secure the safety of the non-Muslim life, as if
Muslims were the aggressors,
or regardless, if non-Muslim civilians were dying in any part of the world, regardless who are the aggressors, and perhaps especially if the Muslims were the aggressors, then there will be state powers intervening with military might to halt whatever oppression or onslaught is being directed against innocent civilians.
So there's a sense of the hypocrisy of Western powers.
This is how many Muslim youth are observing the situation on the ground. And so they're thinking, well, who will defend the Muslims? Who will protect the Muslims? And who will stop the Muslim blood from flowing like this? And they think that they have to do something in an act of desperation. They may not be able to accomplish much. They will almost certainly die in the mission. But they're thinking, well, this is what we have to do. It is a religious duty. We have to defend our Muslim brothers and sisters and Muslim children who are dying in other parts of the world. So what's my response to that? Well, my response is that you are not going to make the difference that you want to see by just simply going to die in the battlefield. The difference that we want to see has to come about through a long and slow process of bringing about change at an intellectual level, at an economic level, at the level of science and technology and development of all kinds.
It requires hard work.
It requires hard work and a lot of patience. But this is the kind of work and patience which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, employed in the first place. For 13 long years, he was preaching his message in Mecca, and he was a persecuted prophet, he and his followers. His followers were a persecuted minority. In these 13 long years, he did not go into a military defense. It is only after he had migrated away from that scene of violence and taken up safe residence in Medina, another city, and he had assumed the state control. And he had an army of people ready to defend the state. It is only then that he received permission from God to defend the state against the aggressors. And this is how Muslims should pursue the nature of the military aspect of jihad or struggle. In that, first of all, it is a defensive struggle, and second, it is done at a time when it is most appropriate, when it becomes a legitimate battle between state powers. And it is not something like a guerrilla type of warfare where individuals take matters into their own hands and they go into the battlefield. That results in chaos, and it is chaos that is continuously proscribed in the Quran. The Quran again and again speaks against chaos, against the mufsideen, those who cause disharmony on earth, those who cause corruption and chaos. And the word fasad in the Quran is mentioned again and again only to condemn this fasad, and fasad is corruption, anarchy, disharmony, and conflict between people.
So, I mean, these individuals might be looking at Muslims who are living just regular, average lives, working, going to the mosque, that sort of thing, and saying that they're not doing their duty to the Muslim Ummah. How would you respond to that?
There's nothing wrong with working. That is also part of what it means to be a Muslim. And in fact, in working, one gets reward from God once one's intention is to please God by going to work. That is a way of pleasing God as well.
But you know what I mean, like fitting into Western society so well and kind of neglecting the Muslims who are suffering.
Yes, I see with you that this is what the Muslim youth are looking at. They see that their parents, to begin with, often, and the people around them are just complacent. They say to themselves, look, Muslims are dying in other parts of the world, and here Muslims are enjoying life, whether it be in Canada or in some other developed country. And it looks like they don't care. They've lost their sense of goal and mission and purpose in life, and they just like enjoying themselves, eating and drinking as animals do. And they're thinking, well, Muslims have a higher purpose and a goal, and we need to bring about social justice. Where is that? And if Muslims are suffering from being under oppression or under siege or anything like this, then it is the duty of these young men to step up to the plate and start batting. And this is what they do. But they need to realize that we can't go from one extreme to another. If on the one extreme people are just complacent, they do nothing, they lose all impetus towards activism, and they just let things lie as they are, and they just enjoy their lives while their brothers and sisters, it doesn't have to be Muslim brothers and sisters, it could be brothers and sisters in humanity, anybody, anywhere, suffering from oppression and injustice. People are dying from conflicts that need not be.
Muslims should care about those
Muslims
issues.
should care about every loss of life, whether a Muslim life or a non-Muslim life. So on the one extreme, there are people who are complacent, doing nothing. It doesn't mean that on the other extreme, we rush into a battlefield, getting ourselves killed and causing chaos in the battlefield, and then coming back with this kind of mindset, which will cause harm to others as well, channeling oneself towards the direction of violence and terrorism. So the balance in between is for people to recognize, yes, there are injustices in the world, and both Muslims and non-Muslims need to work to remove these injustices. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is the slow and painstaking way of first of all, getting an education. It is very important that Muslims become literate, educated people, so that they can have an influence as decision makers in their societies. That Muslims go into fields like journalism, where they can report accurately on some of the injustices that are happening in many parts of the world, so that more awareness can be built in the Western countries or developed countries about the injustices that are happening in underdeveloped countries. It is important that Muslims pursue careers in the legal field, so that they will have the everything at hand to defend Muslims and Muslim causes, and not only Muslim causes, but the causes of anyone who is suffering from injustice or oppression anywhere. It is important for Muslims to get into the field of politics, so that they can influence policy at the international level as well. So all of these require a lot of hard work. It is easy for a person to say, yeah, I'll just go and I'll die in the battlefield and I'll go to heaven. Well, first of all, you don't know if you're actually going to heaven, because it is often reported in hadith that a person went into the battlefield and even died there, but he died as a hypocrite.
Because he did it to be seen, perhaps?
Yes, he wanted fame and so on. So it's not an absolute guarantee. There is a thin line there, and it's easy to fall off the edge. But if one applies oneself slowly and painstakingly, maybe one day you're doing it because you want name and fame, but then at the end of the day you realize, no, wait a minute, I have a higher goal here to please God, and then you correct your intention. And over time, your intention becomes totally corrected. In the end, you're only doing it to please God. As one scholar has put it, maybe when you first start praying, you might be thinking, yeah, people are going to see me and they're going to think I'm such a pious person, and that thought will occur to you. But after you've been doing it again and again, and you've become habituated to praying, it doesn't matter to you anymore whether people like it or don't like it. Praying is just part of you, and you just do it because it's between you and God. It doesn't matter what people say anymore. Well, it is like this. If you were to slowly and painstakingly apply yourself to a life of serving God in any one of the fields I just mentioned, well, that's a lot of hard work of many years. But that brings about more lasting changes in the long run. And that is more assured of bringing the pleasure of God, because in the end you're doing it only for His pleasure, and definitely He does not cause the reward of the doers of good to go wasted.
Thank you very much for those insights, Dr. Shabir Ally. I hope the youth will take your advice.
I hope so too.
All right, we'll take a break. Stay with us when we return, an interview with Noman Ali Khan.